Welcome to Tea Time Live with the Cornell Emerging Markets Institute. Today we discuss entrepreneurship, the evolution, the challenges, how to teach it. We have here Professor Wesley Sine, Faculty Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation and Institute at the Johnson School. We have two students from the Tech MBA, Adrian Sanchez and Gabriel Paredes. And we have an EMI intern from Colombia, Samantha Noguera. So we'll start with you, Professor Sine. I was wondering if you can begin by telling us a bit about your research in entrepreneurship, and then from there, we would love to hear your experiences about teaching entrepreneurship in emerging markets.
Sure. So I do a lot of research right now in Latin America, Colombia, Mexico, Nicaragua, mostly, and also doing a lot of research in China and Saudi Arabia and Jordan. We're done. And so your question was about teaching it globally. So I teach in all those places. I'm going to Saudi Arabia on Friday. One of the things that I find interesting is that the youth, that is young people between, say, 17 years old and 30, are very similar globally right now. I find that they are very motivated to make a difference, to find problems, solve problems, and usually do it through entrepreneurship. So, when you hear about a country like Saudi Arabia, lots of people say, are there a lot of entrepreneurs there? It's a very young country, a lot of youth, and they are so energized. And what I think is really fun is the same principles I teach students in Saudi Arabia work in the United States or in Saudi Arabia or in Colombia. So some of my research highlights the differences of these 5 places. But honestly, there are a few principles that work everywhere in the world that entrepreneurship is based. One of those is creating a global network. And I think that is really difficult today, right? It's the talent is dispersed all over the world. The talent in Saudi Arabia is fabulous. The talent in Mexico is fabulous. The talent in China is incredible. And to be really successful, you need to be able to grab the best talent in the world and bring them into your venture. So I think that's a challenge. But that wasn't your question. Yes, so teaching it globally is fun. It's fun working, and it's not just young people. There's middle-aged people as well that are very entrepreneurial. But it's fun seeing the value that can be created when people from different places come together and bring their skills and know-how and networks and bring them together to create value.
Well, we have two young people from emerging markets who are working in tech and entrepreneurship. And does this resonate with both of you? And do you feel like there's a generational moment happening in entrepreneurship in emerging markets?
So at least for me, I think it is. I feel that in Mexico, at least, as the professor said, like we have a lot of young people. Where in Monterrey, it used to be a more industrial city, and thanks to the booming, like younger, more tech-savvy generation, we've had a better understanding, better clients, and better feedback from our products. A little bit about my background: I do software engineering back home, and so we do apps, mobile and web development. And thanks to that, the younger generation, I guess, more people are I guess, using our products. So it's a booming market, and I think it's regardless of the place you live in. I think that's across all the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I think is that we're living in this moment in which technology is taking into society, and these younger generations. I consider myself in this young generation. It's totally different the way we communicate with each other, the way we can access information, or we can share our knowledge. It's totally different if you compare like 10 years ago. So I think the combination of the technology revolution of communication, and how it's related with young generations. I think it's the big difference that has an impact in entrepreneurship right now.
So, and yet at the same time, we find that even though this is happening on the ground in entrepreneurship all over the world, we find that education in some sense is struggling to keep up. A lot of times the way that we're trained, it's very much focused within a national boundary. And so you're really challenging that in how you're approaching your teaching. Tell us about the challenges you're facing and the opportunities you see.
I think that's very well said. I think, first of all, it's just difficult to teach global entrepreneurship and stay inside the country. And it's also very difficult to take all of your students outside of the country. And the challenges are in resources, but also in cultural understandings. So if you're going to reach out to customers in China, you have to understand their norms, their values, what they care about, what they love. And you probably can't learn that in a room in the Johnson School. You probably actually need to go there, talk to people. Same with Colombia. If you really want to understand what drives and motivates Colombians, you've got to read their literature. With Mexicans, you've got to understand the great poets and understand what people there love and care about. And I think that's hard to do, not impossible, but probably can't entirely be done in Ithaca, New York.
Right. Samantha, how about does this also resonate with you as a Colombian student?
Yeah. I think that regarding about young people, for example, in Colombia, there are a lot of programs that are their target is young people. For example, there is a program called Fondo Emprender that have funds for young people, undergraduate, and also people that just finished university, college. So I think that the wheel of innovation is really powerful in young people, and in Colombia especially is a really important aspect. It has increased in these last years.
And so both of you now are doing a MBA in tech. You're beginning your MBA in tech here at Cornell. And so what have you already learned through your experience thus far? I know it's just beginning. And what do you see as the opportunities for Mexican universities, for what Mexico can do in this space of education, in how to teach entrepreneurship and how to collaborate more with entrepreneurs?
So this is a very difficult space, I think, at least in Monterrey, because I think entrepreneurship is not, we're not entrepreneurially challenged, I guess, but like people don't love, innovation is difficult in general because there's not this, like, at least in tech or in more innovation or space. For example, compared to Silicon Valley, where they have this great, like, innovation hubs, they have this VCs all over the place, and Monterrey, it's very hard to get like mentors. It's hard to get money. It's hard to get people like founders in general. What can they do? Honestly, I don't know. Like so far, we've been learning a lot in the classroom, but I'm very much looking forward to being in New York because they have a very startups central, or like. It's called Startup Studio, and so they're gonna like impulse us to actually like found a startup. Literally every single one of us has to like do a startup project, and so I think that's a good way, at least for pushing us to I guess doing something entrepreneurial based. That could be a good option for some of the universities in Mexico to do these types of things. I guess
in my point of view, I think that it's important to teach, but at the same time, you need to have a mature ecosystem in the emerging markets in our countries. I don't see, like my experience in last years, many startups or entrepreneurs, they have difficult to have successful projects because the ecosystem, from my point of view, is not mature enough. No. We don't have the same actors as for example you have here in the States, so it's difficult to have financial support, mentorship, as Gabriel was talking about. And it's also interesting that I think that the market is not ready for many of the proposals for technology innovation. So we have a digital divide. So if you are trying to launch a product that is focused on a platform, a technology platform, maybe a smartphone, we have to realize that in our countries, not all the people has a smartphone. So that's a thing that it's kind of challenging, this digital divide. So although you can have great experiences teaching in good schools, I think that there is more like external factors that affect successful entrepreneurship. So yeah, I might say that we need to tackle that problem from this ecosystem point of view of entrepreneurship. Not for teaching, but more like how do we make this ecosystem, they talk to each other, that the actors talk to each other, schools, people that has experience already, investors, banks, and everything. So I think the idea is to strive for a better ecosystem, not the teaching part.
Mm. So what about this point about ecosystem, Professor Sine? We were discussing that there is this almost universal generational divide that we're seeing in these countries in terms of this drive for entrepreneurship. But at the same time, there's a diversity in how these ecosystems are developed in different countries. How has your experience?
This is a very good point. Right now we're doing a big research project on how communities in Mexico affect the founding rate. So I was giving a talk in Dominican Republic a few years ago, and I was talking about the importance of universities for entrepreneurs. And a young entrepreneur, after my talk, raised his hand and wanted to make a comment. He said, our problem in the Dominican Republic is that we don't have venture capitalists like you have in the States. We can't really start companies, and we can't be successful. And I said, if no one tries to start companies, then venture capitalists won't come. It's a chicken and egg problem. That actually, the most important thing is for people to work together in communities and support each other in starting businesses, and that will then attract capital. That venture capitals aren't magic, and that communities don't come from nothing. They have to be started by local population. So the United States venture community. So another important thing to remember is that most companies in the United States that are started are not started with venture capital. It's a very rare act for a company to get venture capital. It's a small percent, less than 0.01% to get venture capital. So the point is that what we see going on in the developing world is their own systems or their own ecosystems that are very different than Southern or Northern California ecosystems, where maybe it's not venture capitalists, maybe it's family money. It's typically family money or friends or neighbors that are investing in ventures. And so I think, and that's essentially what I said to this young man in Dominican Republic. I said, what you need to do is learn to work in your own system and work with your system, which probably is going to be reaching out to the local business people, in that case in the Dominican Republic, and reaching out to your friends and family and mobilizing resources in that way. So communities are important, but one part of communities that people don't talk about are things like the extent to which people talk to each other, to which there are institutions that bring people together. It could be religions, it could be churches, it could be social clubs. But this is really important for entrepreneurs, right? They need a way to connect. And in the world, what we're seeing is universities are more and more playing that role. And the central part of the ecosystem is bringing people together so they get to know each other, so they can create, found, and start companies together. So I think the ecosystem is really important. And in Mexico, what we're seeing is religion plays a big role, universities play a big role, and there's disruptors too. The whole narco violence is a disruptor, and we see a very negative impact of that on entrepreneurship. And our research at Columbia showed a very similar thing, that there are these institutions that bring people together, but there are also these institutions that disrupt and pull people apart. So ecosystems, I totally agree, that's so important.
So to end, I want to end by asking a question about what role do you see, a school like the Johnson School having in this process of trying to develop these ecosystems, of trying to, leverage these institutions on their own terms, but at the same time provide the guidance and mentorship that.
That's a great question, and it's so important. So a few years ago, I had a couple of students, one of my class, guy from Argentina, Diego Rey, wonderful scientist, and a gentleman named Jason Springs, who's an MBA. And they took my class, they met each other, they learned a little bit about entrepreneurship, they started looking for a problem to solve. They found a problem, they worked together as an MBA, and there's another gentleman named Leo from Brazil who played an important role. The three of them identified a problem that needed to be solved. They created, Leo and Diego were both PhD students. They created a solution and later sold that solution for $440 million to a large pharmaceutical. Super successful, these three guys. Why? Because the Johnson School brought them together, right? They would never have met each other if it wasn't for the Johnson School. And it was bringing that talent from the US, Argentina, and Brazil together. That's where the value was created. And that created, it won't just create value, it will save a lot of people's lives by the time this product moves forward. So I think the Johnson School and Cornell and most universities play a role of creating these communities, bringing people together. Another example, Abdullah Asiri was a young man in my class in Saudi Arabia from Russia at King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. It's one of the best technology universities in the Middle East. He took my class and fell in love with the idea of entrepreneurship, came up with an idea, went back to Russia and started one of the biggest fast food chains in Russia. This guy was a PhD in science in Saudi Arabia and was trained in entrepreneurship by a guy from the United States. So what role can Johnson play? Bringing people together, I think, creating these communities. It's not what we teach, it's that we bring together. It's most important.
And for all three of you, what would you like to see Johnson doing?
I think, like, for me and Gabriel, I can speak, I think, for both of us. We came here for this Cornell Tech experience, and pretty much for me it was very important, this diversity. It's interesting that we have a program, a cohort, in which there is a lot of people, like a broad diversity of people, not only from different countries, but the background also. So it's very important. I really believe in this wisdom of the crowds. So for solving some problems, when you have a diversity, I think it's great to have this diversity. I think the different opinions, the different perspectives that institution like Cornell Tech can bring, especially technology oriented to create products, to create services, to create ideas. I think it's a valuable aspect. So I think I am in the same kind of idea as a professor to say diversity and the integration of ideas. I think it's the real reason that, or is the most important thing from my point of view of these kind of institutions.
I totally agree. I think I've learned maybe just as much or maybe more from our cohort than from our professors. And I think they're amazing people and all these diverse backgrounds. And I think it's like a melting pot of all these like skills and abilities. And for sure, I mean, there's a lot of interesting people I'm looking forward to collaborating with.
Okay, well, it seems like we're out of time. I'd like to thank all of our guests for being here, and until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.